Did you want a stiffer drink? I can hook you up.
We might need one before we're done with this case.
Yeah, I mean, before the end of this is all done, we might need something stiffer. Just trying to. All right. Yeah, a lot of stuff. But what's up, everyone? Corey Singletary here with the Citizens Utility Board for episode, I don't even know, 4 of our little show here, CUB Tracks. With me, as usual, is
Tom Content. Here I am,
Executive Director. And it always, usually in my many years of working in this industry, I always thought of spring as sort of the calm time of year. It really isn't. And actually, hang on for just a second. That was going to get annoying real fast with the heat pump just blaring away in the background. But yeah, it has not been quiet. I mean, this morning, today's Thursday, so I don't know when folks will be watching, but or listening. But today was Thursday, and the commission just approved another 6 solar facilities for Alliant Energy. Part of their over 1 gigawatt of solar coming in over the next year or two. So that'll be exciting. I guess we can get into that more maybe in the future if folks are interested in that. But the big one,
it's a big issue too.
It is a big issue too. It's related to kind of a big overarching issue, which I think we're going to talk a little bit about today, which is there over the last several weeks, and actually at this point over almost a couple of months, but we got some rate cases for 2023, and some sticker shock, I think someone had said. Yeah,
buckle your seatbelts. If you thought your heating bills that you were experiencing this winter were painful, there could be more pain ahead. We're seeing some sizable increases coming our way, if depending on how the PSC rules on these.
Hang on for just a second. All right, back into it. So sorry, we had some audio issues, and I'm just going to have to boost the heck out of Tom in post here. But yeah, maybe we can take them in order. Start with MG&E. I think it was back in March. They filed to adjust their electric rates for 2023. A limited reopener. Basically, it's a case to address a limited number of issues. And essentially, the price tag for that for ratepayers is coming in at 4.38% for the whole utility for 2023.
That's right. And so we're seeing they just got an increase for 2022, but the commission allowed them to come back for a discrete set of issues, mainly the new generation.
Yeah. Yeah, and that gets kind of brings it back around, right? We were talking about the new solar that
exactly
the commission just approved for Alliant, and the biggest driver for MG&E for 2023 is rolling in all the new investment they've made in facilities like Badger Hollow, the Paris solar and battery electric storage facility. Some of that's going to be coming in 2023. The Red Barn Wind project, again, some of that coming in 2023. So most of the rate increase is driven by, I believe it's a little over half is driven by, that new investment and all that new clean carbon-free generation resources. And another part is also still related to all of this sort of industry transition, and that the utility wants to change the depreciation schedule, which sounds really wonky, but they want to essentially change the payment schedule for Columbia Unit 2 to essentially speed that up, bring change the depreciation schedule for that, and that has impacts for 23 that raises rates a little bit.
Right, exactly. So it's there's a lion's share of some clean energy stuff, but there's some coal costs in here too.
And the coal costs are related to that transition. Right? These
Right.
are facilities that are being retired early, as it were, to make way for clean units like all the solar investment that we're seeing.
Right. No, we're seeing a lot of steel put in the ground on this as part of this transition, and so we're seeing the impacts of that, or that's what's flowing into customers' bills at this point.
Yeah, so I don't know how you look at it or what kind of strikes you about this issue, but certainly there are a lot of economic benefits that we see and they're debated in the various cases for these solar projects and these new clean resources about the long-term cost benefits of that sort of that carbon-free transition, right? But one of the, I guess, accounting things that people may not be aware of is because you're essentially going through a fuel to steel transition, right? Instead of paying for coal or natural gas and whatnot, you're paying for steel in the ground, and the way that that's paid off essentially through rates, you end up with sort of a bump in the early years of that project, and that slowly gets paid down over time. So it may work out economics over the long period. But definitely in the first few years of those projects, you can see a lot of upward pressure on rates.
Yeah, it's not exactly a smooth. That we want to see it as smooth transition as possible. But when you're going fuel for steel, it's not as easy. And then when you've got fuel prices because there's still a lot of fossil in the portfolio, when you've got fuel price pressures happening in the global energy marketplace at the same time, it makes it even tougher.
Yeah, and we'll see this again in when we talk about the other utilities we want to talk about today. I mean, there is one silver lining in that part of MG&E's in part of this reopener for MG&E and for their adjustment for 23. Right. They are reflecting some downward, a decrease in costs that's related to that change in their generation portfolio, where there's a decrease in fuel cost partially because of what they're seeing forecast-wise, but also because a decrease in fuel costs overall because we're moving to renewable generation.
No, that's a really good sign. I mean, that's the thing about wind and solar is that you don't have to pay for either of those fuels when the sun is shining or when the wind is blowing. And so there's definitely the fuel cost benefit is actually part of that case.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll start to see a little bit more of those benefits outweigh some of the capital costs, because otherwise it's going to be hitting folks' wallets pretty hard.
Yeah, it's a real conundrum as the transition takes place here. But what's interesting to me is just as you look at a range of options for new generation, solar, the industry studies show that solar is the most cost-effective resource out there. So the people are going to it not just for green reasons, but for economic reasons. The wild card right now, which is mentioned in some of the rate filings we're seeing, is the tariff issue involving solar panels and the potential price increases that utilities and others are seeing relating to the cost of solar linked to tariffs. So everything gets a little more complicated, right? So
yeah, everything. And as we've learned over the last year or so, while we may not have thought about it before, global supply chains make everything complicated.
Yeah, cost pressures across the economy.
Yeah, I mean, if for at least for the folks that we represent, for the residential and small business folks thinking about MG&E, I mean, if there is a silver lining, as it were, at least as filed, right? So as a reminder for folks, this is as filed. We still have to go through the case. We'll be digging into it more. A lot of other parties will be digging into it more, and we'll be trying to find ways to, where possible, trying to improve things for ratepayers if there's a way to ease some of this rate pressure. But looking at it from the perspective of our constituents, residential and small business, again, at least as filed by the utility, the rate increase for residential and small business is around this 4.38, actually a little bit less, somewhere up in the like 3.8 range. So I think that that's at least a plus in that if people are seeing stuff in the news where, MG&E has filed for like a 4% rate increase, it's not one of those situations where there's sort of a sneaky sort of bill coming at you after the fact where you're thinking it's just 4, and then after the fact, residential gets like a 6% increase or something like that. So at least it's kind of in line. And there aren't any extra surprise. There shouldn't be any extra surprises, at least from a rate standpoint. So that one, we'll be digging into that, but that one was the first one through the chute, and there's some interesting issues there. But the big one today, that was the companies, I guess, put out a press release on it, and they've been busy making their filings with the commission that the WEC Energy Group utilities, Wisconsin Gas, and Wisconsin Public Service Corporation have filed their rate case for 2023, and this is the one where I look at the numbers and it hurts a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, $475 million is a lot of money. And if you take it across all the utilities for WEC Energy Group, that's a chunk of change.
It is a chunk of change, and to put it, even looking at it in terms of more, I guess, easy to digest or concrete terms for folks who are customers of one utility or another, right? If you look at We Energies,
exactly,
which is the biggest electric utility in the state, the company is asking for an 8.4% increase in revenues overall for the utility for 2023. We don't know yet what they're going to be asking for, say, the residential class. It could be higher than that. But just even as an overall, price tag,
right,
8.4 is big. Normally, when we deal with rate cases, and you've been following this a while back from when you were in the press, you were usually talking about numbers like 3%, 4%, 5%. Upwards of 8 is huge, and that's not even looking at some utilities like WEPCO's gas side of the shop. Right, their gas utility is almost 11%. They're asking for a 10.7% increase to revenues for Wisconsin Electric gas customers. So that's a lot of money.
Right. And even in Wisconsin Electric or Wisconsin Gas customers who are, across the state, who are also Energy's customers on the gas side, it's, more than 8% there. So 8.3%. So.
Yeah, 8.3%. And the thing that's easy to get lost, right? You look at any one of these numbers, right? You look at, an 8.4% increase. That's not, all right, it's not great. It's not so bad. Okay, gas, 10.7 or 8.3%, right? That's not great. But but a lot of people are joint customers of the utility in some fashion. They're
right,
combined electric and natural gas,
exactly,
which means they're going to be hit on both sides. And so their household energy burden, to use the term that we think about a lot, is going to go up significantly if the utility is granted the rate increase as filed. And we were talking about it with MG&E that the big driver for them are these additions on the sort of clean energy side. And for the electric utilities, it's north of 50% of what the drivers are is that. Are those new additions in generation? So again, we're seeing that sort of clean energy transition doesn't come without a cost. That's not to say it's not overall a good thing, but there are cost implications.
Exactly. I mean, you've got increases tied to the solar projects, the battery projects, the natural gas plants that they're acquiring or building, and for increased investment in the distribution grid, all hitting at the same time. And what's interesting that is, often we see the utilities file these 2-year cases, and so you have a kind of a clear picture for what you're getting over the next 2 years. But this one, it's a little more fuzzy because they're asking for, again, a reopener for next year, but we actually don't know what the cost impact's going to be for that at all at this point.
Yeah, it's and to continue on that for a bit, it's essentially going to be, at least what they're sort of representing, right, is it's kind of more of the same, and that there are some of these new renewable generation costs coming in 2023, but a lot of them are going to come in 24. Right? A lot of these new projects, the Paris Solar project, the Weston reciprocating internal combustion engine natural gas facility, the Rice plant that we talked about a couple of times. All those are in service date 2024. The Darien Solar and Battery Electric Storage Facility, the Koshkonong project, all of those are in the 23 to 24 range. So they're really going to come 100% all in starting in over the 23 to 24 timeframe. So we're going to see more of this upward pressure because of new generation. The hope would then be that there's at least some counterbalancing, offset because of decreased fuel costs, right? But we don't know what that would look like.
Right, and decreased costs to utility and the utilities customers from the coal plants that are being shut down. Yeah. So they are going to see operating and maintenance costs go down because it takes a lot more people to run a coal plant than it does to run some solar farms. But how does that wash out in terms of customers? Do we actually see savings? Do bills actually go down, or do those cost savings from not running the coal plant just moderate the increase? And that's especially with the concern that that I have as a We Energies customer myself, but what I have on behalf of all We Energies customers is, We Energies customers have the 7th highest rates among 51 utilities across the upper Midwest. And so it's been an ongoing challenge to try to make a dent to actually bring those down because of all the cost pressures that we're seeing. Fortunately for WPS customers, I used to be a WPS customer when we lived in Green Bay, but their rates have been lower than the state average. But you're seeing another increase coming here. Yeah,
for Wisconsin Public Service, you're still kind of in the ballpark, like a 6% and 8% increase for electric and natural gas, actually a little bit higher than those numbers. But, so you're still looking at a pretty good hit for both of those utilities for 2023. And you mentioned that there's potentially some, offsets through decreased expense from not having to run, fossil plants, the coal plants anymore, like South Oak Creek. But that's just on the expense side. The utility is still asking for the customers to pay for, the plant itself.
That's right. And that's a big challenge that we've been dealing with multiple utilities across multiple cases. But with the South Oak Creek plant that's being shut down under what's filed, they're going to utility customers will still be paying for that plant long after it's needed to keep the lights on. 13 more years, in fact. And then for WPS customers, they'll still be paying. They're being asked to pay, continue to pay, and the utilities, rate of return profit would still be earned on the Columbia plant that's being shut down for 15 more years. So that's an issue that a few years ago we were able to reach an agreement with the utilities with We Energies on the Pleasant Prairie plant. But as of now, it's the issues right back in front of us of continuing to pay for coal while making this transition.
Yeah, it's, the stranded asset issue, to use our sort of industry parlance, is, it's a tricky one to solve. I mean, it's one where when we talk to folks, it sometimes it takes a little bit of explanation, right? Because if you have an old gas guzzler car and you sell it to buy an electric vehicle or a hybrid or something that's more efficient, right? Normally you can dispose of the cost, sort of the capital cost of the car, even if you still have a loan, right?
Stop making payments.
Yeah, you can sell it, get some value, and pay off the rest of your loan, and you don't have that loan. You don't have the original loan cost hanging over you. But with a power plant, not the same. You can buy the Tesla or the Prius or the Leaf or whatever, but you still have to pay for the giant gas guzzler, right? And so, I mean, that's horribly oversimplified, but it is an interesting challenge and a real challenge. But I am comforted a little bit by we have some precedent experience with We Energy specifically with finding some alternatives, and we're hopeful that maybe they might be open to that. We don't know. They just filed their rate case.
Yeah.
But at a minimum, the chair has sent some signals that she's looking for some alternative thinking on this.
Yeah. No, I think the PSC sent a message in their decisions last year that they want this issue really looked at carefully, and they don't expect customers to be saddled with overburdened with costs on these things. And the Pleasant Prairie case, which essentially was ended up refinancing those costs to a much lower rate, produced real savings for customers. So let's hope we can make that kind of case again.
Yeah. So the clean energy transition is a big driver. And there is some counterbalancing in this case. Like we've mentioned, there's a decrease in fuel costs because of that new generation for We Energies and Wisconsin Public Service. But a lot of it is the new capital cost, that new rate base that we talk about. There are some other interesting elements in the WEC utilities. One of them is costs related to COVID. Mm-hmm. Those are coming in, some amortized balances that the utility is going to be looking or is seeking to recover. So we'll have to talk about that. There's, an interesting little bit, just sticking with the sort of capital investment side. There's a non-trivial amount of distribution investment, right, for the poles and wires and stuff. And I think you talked about Milwaukee area customers. I mean, one thing that might be of interest to Milwaukee area customers is the utility is proposing sort of a relatively large amount of spending that's specifically directed at system hardening. I think my sense is it's a direct response to all the outages that we saw from the storms that we've seen in previous months. Yeah,
the homes, the outages that my home and many other homes in the Milwaukee region experienced last year and even the year before that, I believe. So, as some really extremely high wind storms took out a significant portion of their system. So they're proposing, I think it's a total of $700 million in investment just on that alone over a period of years, 10 years, I believe. And it's similar to what Wisconsin Public Service customers have been paying for through a different program in northern Wisconsin that kind of targeted reliability improvements in distribution improvements in areas where they were having recurring problems with outages.
So let it not be said that the utilities don't pay attention to things like outages and keeping people's lights on.
I know there was a lot of grumbling when the outages were going on. I could see it on social media that people were saying, "Well, now they're going to use this as an excuse to increase our rates because just to fix this problem, and shouldn't they have had this problem fixed already?" And but it is a challenging environment with the kind of the extremely high winds and the extreme weather extremes that we're seeing. So I think the whole industry is evolving toward adapting to more variable weather conditions as well.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a double-edged sword, right? It's like you want greater reliability, but the reliability comes at a cost, and it's natural to sort of to see in those programs. The cynical view of, well, this is just more profit opportunity for the utility. But certainly, I think you raise a good point that, I think folks that work more on the environmental side of the table from us have talked about quite a bit is, we are seeing greater variability in weather. I don't think we've seen the kind of straight line wind storms that impacted Milwaukee this past year really much over the preceding decades. So they're in addition to sort of a clean energy transition, climate change is making itself felt in small ways incrementally over time, and I think some of these investments are going to have to respond to that, and it's a balance, right? I think we all remember back when there was the California wildfires. At least I saw in my social media people being like, "Well, why don't they just bury all of these lines?" Right. And my immediate thought was like, "Do you have any idea how much that costs?"
It's not cheap. Everything does come with a cost, but you're seeing responses to it. I mean, you're seeing what's happening with California with PG&E and the way it's having to respond to wildfires and extreme weather conditions, and then you're seeing consumers and businesses take matters into their own hands. I mean, it happened after Superstorm Sandy in the Northeast. It happened last year in Texas after Winter Storm Uri, and even in Wisconsin, you're seeing more of it. And what am I talking about? It's people adding more solar, their own systems, their own battery storage, generators, just to beef up their own resilience. So you're seeing people respond, and now you're seeing utilities respond as well.
Yeah, and we see it in the utilities ask to build solar and storage, but even at the sort of retail level, that's getting less expensive. This is not meant to be a plug for the program, but my wife and I are looking into the Madison Group Buy program that Renew Wisconsin helps to run to maybe put some solar and storage on our home before the tax incentives run out. If we can get some panels from China before that happens. There's one last little element I think I wanted to talk about in the WEC applications for We Energies, Wisconsin Gas, and WPSC. And that it's a little wonky, but the utility is asking to modify sort of the financial parameters for the utility. They want to increase their equity ratio up to 53% for the utilities. That basically allows them to earn a little more return on equity is functionally what it does. And so
once more in English.
Once more in English. The utility wants more profit. That's probably a cynical way of putting it. Yeah. So it's buried in there, and it is buried because there's a kind of a carrying cost or cost of capital element, and the utilities told us that when viewed as a whole, that their cost of capital is lower because the debt rate that they're working with is lower, right? But from a utility shareholder profit perspective, they want to increase the equity ratio, which would allow them to accumulate on just a pure dollar standpoint more profit, more return for equity investors.
Right. So it would be more return at the 10% or 10% plus return that their utilities earn, and so they're not seeking to actually increase the return part of it. But the problem is that return is well above the national average already. So they've had rates, profit rates or returns on equity that are consistently well above the national average for years, and that's an issue we really need to dig into, as well as the addition on the equity layer.
Yeah, that's definitely something we've been looking at. Is how can we better align these utilities' allowed return levels, allowed profit levels with sort of market fundamentals, with the industry as a whole, because they do have very, very high return levels. And so to your point, in terms of putting it in English, buried in the application is an ask for greater profit. And so again, there's a lot of complicated issues here, and that's just kind of touching the surface of this application. It's a full-blown rate case with all of the complexity that normally comes with it, and but obviously it's still early days. I mean, it's day one, so
it's very early days. I mean, and this is going to be an evolving process. Maybe just to give a quick rundown of how the process usually works, but from a layman's terms, it basically it's now is when the PSC staff digs in and kind of and asks a ton of questions and tries to really ferret out what's what here and in the gory details of the application, and then there's the opportunity for CUB and others to weigh in with our perspective and try to find ways to make this more affordable for customers, and then away we go. Decision would be when toward the end of the year, I suppose.
Yeah, it would be probably my sense would be in November, but it's all ultimately up to the commission and how they want to schedule it. Usually would be early November, mid-November when they would actually make a decision.
And then in about a month, we'll know more about what the actual impact would be for as filed for the residential and for the small business customers. So CUB members want to be alert to that. We'll be updating you about that as well. But we want to see what this means for both residential and small business customers.
So, yeah. Big ask, big numbers the utilities have brought forward. If you watch this or listen to this and it's still 2022 and you're a We Energies customer or Wisconsin Public Service customer, there will be an opportunity for you to be heard.
That's right.
There's a public comment process, and usually there isn't much participation, but we're hoping that more and more people will get involved and tell their story to the commission as to how these rate increases and the utilities proposals impact them. Because unless there's a large number of comments, it's kind of hard for individuals to move the needle. It really is all about getting as many voices before the commission as possible, in addition to our work, which is more admittedly on sort of like the technical kind of wonky side, but I think the personal side from the public comments really matter.
I think that's true. That's true. I mean, I think we're there as the customer representative and the customer advocate, but to the extent that people want to tell their story about how, their personal take on their own household and their own household energy burden, they should weigh in.
All right. Cool. I guess, well, not cool, but rate increases are never cool. But we'll be continuing to talk about this.
We'll be digging in
as the year moves on. I mean, if you have any thoughts, please send us put your comments down below if you're watching this on YouTube. But yeah, we're still trying to wrap our heads around this. The utility just filed it, and there'll be a lot of work.
Big year ahead of digging in on this one.
Cool. So folks want to, if you wouldn't mind, if you wouldn't mind, if you found this helpful, or maybe if you didn't find it helpful, but hopefully you found it helpful, and if you do,
of course they did. Be confident.
All right. Hopefully this was helpful for folks. So smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, we took a week off last week because it was basically like everyone was sick last week.
CUB was sick last week, basically.
I was fine.
No, you were fine most of the week, right?
I can't do a one-man show. But yeah, so yeah, we'll be back and with more fun, interesting information.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Tom.